Let me tell you something wild. Right up front, sometimes a single sentence is all it takes to flip the whole damn script on your life. You know what I mean? I've seen it. I lived it. And yeah, it happened in a ballroom that stank of power and money, where nobody even noticed the black maid working quietly in the corner, not until she opened her mouth and brought the room to a dead stop. That was me, Serena Jackson. And believe me, this isn't some motivational poster nonsense. This is how I clawed my way back from invisible to undeniable. It started at a luxury resort, some fancy corporate retreat for the Vance Consulting leadership team. You know, the type champagne flowing, expensive perfume, everyone puffed up and laughing at their own genius. I was 29, working housekeeping, invisible in my pressed uniform, clearing glasses and mopping up spills while these high-flying execs didn't even see me. Well, except for Claire Harper, a VP of communications, who'd fought tooth and nail to get there herself and knew what it felt like to be overlooked. She caught my eye, thanked me, her voice real, and for a second I remembered what it felt like to be seen, even if I tried to play it cool. But then Elliot Vance arrived. Picture this: salt and pepper hair, a suit that cost more than my rent for a year, oozing that CEO confidence that fills a room and makes people straighten up. He strutted in, started talking about leadership, about knowing your place, about how real vision means never apologizing for success. You could see the crowd eating it up except for me. Because here's the twist: 8 years earlier, back at Georgetown Law, he'd been my professor. And he'd crushed my dreams right out from under me. You ever watch someone berate a server in public? Now imagine that, but worse, because he wasn't just Rede was determined to put me in my place. All it took was one spilled drink, one snide comment about people like me, and suddenly I was standing there, cloth in hand, looking this man right in the eye. "You taught me more than you know, Professor Vance." That was it. One sentence, and the room froze. His face went from red to chalk white, and for the first time, everyone saw me. People tried to laugh it off, but Elliot couldn't let it go. He demanded I be fired. Claire, and even Marjorie, the head of housekeeping, tried to keep things from blowing up, but it was too late. I was already a ghost in that world, and now the man who'd ruined me all those years ago was determined to finish the job. Back in the break room, my coworkers asked if it was true, if I'd really known him before. All I could say was, it's complicated. But alone in my room, I took out my law degree, the one stamped in a note that said, "Don't let him win again." I knew I couldn't run forever. Claire, sharp as ever, started digging. She found out about my past, about how a top student at Georgetown Law vanished after accusing a professor of sabotage. There was no name in the article, but she connected the dots. Meanwhile, Malcolm Elliott's son found me and apologized for his father, trying to figure out the truth. I told him, people change when power changes them. He didn't know if I was warning him or insulting him, but it made him think. Twist number 2. Claire tracked down Rebecca Winters, Elliot's old assistant, who'd vanished after accounting errors destroyed her career. Turned out she'd uncovered fraud and got blamed, NDAs and threats forcing her into silence. There were others too. Claire and Malcolm realized there was a pattern: women who stood up to Elliot were erased. That night, sitting by the lake, Claire asked me why I'd come back, why I'd take a job at his company of all places. Because silence only protects men like him, I told her. Because I spent 8 years hiding and nothing changed. That's when we made a pact: no more silence. We'd find the evidence and bring it to the board. It all built to the kind of showdown you usually only see in movies. We snuck into Elliot's secret storage unit, yeah. He didn't trust digital files, real old-school villain energy. We found folders full of NDAs, character assassination letters, including the one that had destroyed me, full of lies he'd written to make sure I'd never work in law again. All while a private investigator hired to dig up dirt on me ended up finding proof of Elliot's corruption instead. Next morning, with the board gathered, Claire and Malcolm laid it all out. The letters, the NDAs, Rebecca's story, the pattern of ruined lives. I stood in front of them, no longer in a maid's uniform, and told my story, not just my humiliation, but what it meant for every woman who'd ever been erased. Elliot tried to shout us down, But then Detective Keller, a PI, came in with a flash drive, proof of fraud and cover-ups. Board members looked at each other and knew they had no choice. Elliot exploded, raged, threatened lawsuits, but they voted to remove him as CEO. As security escorted him out, he glared at me. "You think you've won? This isn't over." But I knew, deep down, the cycle was broken. Afterward, things didn't magically get better. Defamation lawsuits, media spin, people taking sides. But something had shifted. Other women came forward with their own stories. A support network formed almost overnight, and a new CEO Claire offered me a job building an ethics and advocacy program from the ground up. I went back to finish my law degree, helped Malcolm launch a nonprofit for accountability, and slowly, I started to feel like I was writing my own story again, not just living in someone else's footnotes. Years passed. The company, now called Integrity Partners, became a model for reform. I ran mentorship programs, spoke at conferences, watched as new faces came in, people who'd never have gotten a chance before. Even Malcolm found his own path, far from his father's shadow. 5 years on, I stood in a packed hall, leading a panel on ethics. Across the crowd, I saw faces, some grateful, some skeptical, but all of them watching me. The power wasn't in any one speech, any policy, or even in taking down a monster like Elliot Vance. It was in that first sentence, spoken in a voice nobody could ignore. The one that said, "I'm here, and I won't be silent anymore." So let me ask you, what would you risk to speak your truth? What's the one sentence you'd say if you knew the world had to listen? Drop a comment below, share your story, because maybe the next person to change everything isn't my to.